Labor is more than just a book. We provide authors freedom and flexibility throughout the publishing process, professional book editing, award-winning design, and some of the highest royalty structures in the publishing industry. And as always, you will retain 100% of the rights to your book.
I was looking to find a company that I could trust, one that assisted in the editing process completely.
The most important qualities that I was looking for was a publisher who was honest and upfront, no hidden costs or fees, and owning the rights to my own work.
Christian Faith Publishing will publish, market, and sell your books in all major bookstores, online booksellers, as well as specialty Christian bookstores. Call for your free author submission kit.
800-978-4812. 800-978-4812. 800-978-4812. That's 800-978-4812.
Remember Helen Kerwin? As county commissioner, she raised the tax rate over 95%, increased taxes, utility rates, connection fees, and pushed to give the state even more taxing authority. Well, Helen Kerwin's back, handpicked by the Washington swamp to push a voucher scheme that takes funds away from our local schools and gives taxpayer-funded private school vouchers to illegal immigrants. They'd even go to the front of the line ahead of U.S. citizens and legal residents. It's the very same voucher scheme Dwayne Burns stopped last year before delivering the largest tax cut in Texas history, the strongest border security plan in America, and new laws to protect our kids at school and online. Dwayne Burns is the real conservative who puts our community first. He won't be bullied by powerful politicians or D.C. special interest groups because he doesn't work for them. He works for us. Political ad paid for by the Dwayne Burns campaign.
Here's important new information from the Diabetes Solution Center for you, a family member, or a loved one suffering with diabetes. If you have lost your provider, or if you need a provider for diabetic supplies, you may qualify to receive your diabetic testing supplies now with little or no out-of-pocket cost, regardless of your age. All you need is Medicare or private insurance to be potentially eligible. Call the Diabetes Solution Center right now for details. Just takes a couple of minutes. Our friendly, knowledgeable agents will give you free, no-obligation information, handle all the insurance paperwork, and make sure your supplies are delivered directly to your door for free.
Call U.S. Medical Supply 24 hours a day. 800-597-9323. 800-597-9323. 800-597-9323. Call right now. 800-597-9323.
Good evening, Johnson County. Welcome to this week's episode of the Texas Transparency Project. The Texas Transparency Project airs most Thursdays at 5 p.m. here exclusively on JOCO Community Radio. JOCO Community Radio focuses on all the ins and outs of Johnson County, Texas. JOCO Community Radio has many shows and airs 24 hours a day. You can visit the JOCO Community Radio Facebook page to watch shows live or to see replays. Also, you can go to www.jococommunityradio.com, where Apple and Android apps are available. Tune in to get the ins and outs of Johnson County, Texas. Here at the Texas Transparency Project, we focus on 3 relevant topics applicable to residents of Johnson County and do what we can to shed light on how they affect all of us. The 3 topics are federal and state politics when they're applicable to us here in Johnson County, Texas local municipal politics, mainly county and city councils, and Texas school politics, specifically school districts, school boards, and school bonds. Tonight, we're starting round 2 of the Texas House District 58 election. It's the Republican primary election, and it's in a runoff. The primary election was held. There was 3 candidates, and we are now in a runoff election right here in Johnson County. Texas is a unique state. There seems to be an election for something every month, and it's really easy to lose track of the elections that can affect us here locally. So right now we're in the middle of city council, school boards, mayoral, and school trustee elections and school bond elections. And right after that, right on the tail end, of the election this May 4th, which is going to be decided, we're steamrolling right in to the representative for the House, Texas House District 58 to represent Johnson and Somerville counties. So don't lose sight and think that you're going to have a break here after Saturday, because we got a few more weeks until we get a break over the summer, until we roll into the November elections. So for our episode tonight, we're highlighting state politics. And here again, it's the Texas House of Representatives 58th District. And we're honored to have one of the candidates, Miss Helen Kerwin. This is her second time joining us on the Texas Transparency Project, and she is one of two candidates for the Texas House of Representatives 58th District. Texas House 58th includes Crescent, Burleson, parts of South Mansfield on the north side, Venus, Alvarado, Grandview on the east side, Glen Rose, and Godley on the west side, and Rio Vista to the south, with Joshua, Keene, and Cleburne smack dab in the middle. Ms. Kerwin is running against current House of District 58 Representative Dwayne Burns. Representative Burns will be a guest with us on the Texas Transparency Project in 2 weeks. And in the main primary election, both of them have joined us before. So we appreciate them trusting us enough to come back to the show. Both candidates should be commended for agreeing to come on the Texas Transparency Project. We and the voters appreciate it. Stump speeches and question and answers are the norm. This has been a good election cycle where we've gotten some good sit downs for some extended interviews and some more intimate questions from the audience and some longer discussions. And it's much more difficult for a candidate to go through that. So we're lucky here in Texas's 58th House District to have candidates who are courageous and accommodating enough to agree to do that. So we're close to the runoff election. Here again, we're getting ready to steamroll through the city councils, mayorals, school trustees, and school bond elections. Early voting for that is over, and this May 4th is election day for most of the local communities that are going challenged. But right after that, we will be in the Texas House District 58 District, and that will include Representative Dwayne Burns, who will be a guest in 2 weeks, and Miss Helen Kerwin. Early voting for this is May 20th through May 24th. And you need to reach out to Johnson County or Somerville County elections page to figure out where you need to go vote. And May 28th is election day. So it's a very short early voting window, and then we're in election day. And this is going to decide, for the most part, Johnson County is a Republican stronghold, and this election, it can be decided. So if you're out there and you think that you've already voted on this, it's not settled yet. So you're going to be asked to go to the polls one more time after this Saturday to shore up Texas House District 58. So back to tonight's guest, Miss Helen Kerwin. She's a mother of three, an entrepreneur, a former mayor, county commissioner, 4-H superintendent, FFA horse judging coach, and more. I'm sure that is the most pressing question in this campaign is your horse judging coaching. Welcome, Miss Kerwin, to the Texas Transparency Project. We're knee deep in the middle of this runoff. It's beginning to heat up now as the other elections wind down. But before we get down to business, tell us about yourself, Miss Kerwin, before we introduce our second guest here, and what led you to the decision to jump into state politics, stepping up from a lot more local and take a shot at Texas's House District 58, ma'am.
Well, thank you, Craig, for having me back. And I'm thrilled to be here and to be able to talk to all the citizens of District 58. And I would also like to tell them that if they have any questions at all or they want to talk to me, my website is helenkerwin.com, and I welcome that anytime from any of them. Well, I moved to Glen Rose in 1975, bought the old Glen Hotel with my then husband. 5 years we moved in, and we restored it. And my twins were born actually right down at the Johnson County Hospital on Main Street. And I was driving by it the other day. It's still there. And I'm hoping someone will save that building. That's a special building, just an aside. And then we sold it in 1980, and we bought a little farm in Glen Rose. And that's where I've been living all these years. And got happily divorced right after that. And then I was single, been single all these years, working at the Somerville County Library, which was my dream job for $6 an hour, when I realized that I had to do something else to go ahead and raise my 3 daughters. So I opened up a little flower shop on the square called Country Garden. And for the next 15 years, that raised my daughters. And then when they went off to college, I went ahead and to pay for their college, I turned our house where I am today into a bed and breakfast, starting with 1 room at a time. And then rescued 300-year-old prairie homes in Glen Rose. They were going to be torn down, beautiful batten board style. I love preserving historical buildings. And today I'm in my 28th year, and we do events, churches, we do weddings, we hold 50 people, we build a little chapel. So I've kind of come up through the business sector, 3 really quintessential Americana businesses. And I've been very blessed, and the community has been awesome and supported me. But kids came back, got married, was a grandma, and now they're all grown and gone. And I thought, what was the best job I ever had? And it was being in public office. I mean, where else can you go to work every morning and have the resources to be able to make a difference, make changes, improve your community? It was wonderful. So I thought, well, I've done city, I've done county. I was on the North Texas Council of Governments Board. I've done regions. So I thought, well, the next step is state. And of course, we have all of these pressing issues, such as the border, school choice, election integrity. And then I learned about property taxes and the possibility that they could be eliminated. And I met Russell Bennett and Craig Hunley, and I learned about their bill and their mission. And I am so excited to be a part of that. I really think that could be a reality. And so I'm jumping in to do that.
Craig Hunley and Russell Bennett. A lot of people here might not be too familiar with Russell Bennett, but he's Craig Hunley's counterpart, but down south near the Houston area.
Mm-hmm.
And both of them have spent years trying to negotiate a very difficult thing. And I don't think there's anybody that is advocating that we shouldn't pay taxes. Right. It's just about, are your taxes going to be tied to where you put your head down every night? And they're doing some great work, and they've made a lot of progress, and they've stayed in the game very cleanly, and they've stayed laser-like focused on their issue, and they are stalwarts they're just stalwarts of their community, and just great representatives of just trying to better an environment around, and they're helping people across the board with stuff like that.
Well, and the seniors that I hear about in my meet and greets and my town halls that are being taxed out of their homes. And then you have the young families can't afford to buy a home.
Sure.
So something's got to be done.
And we're gonna talk some property taxes here pretty in depth in a minute, but we are joined by Mr. Lyndon Laird. And last time we had you on the Texas Transparency Project, you were a candidate, and you were running against Ms. Kerwin and Representative Burns. And for to remind everybody about Mr. Lyndon Laird, he's an esteemed and experienced attorney. He's board certified, which is a very elite level of lawyer. He's Baylor trained. He's a trial lawyer. He's represented plaintiffs and defendants in everything from personal injury, complex business litigation, appeals. He's been recognized as a top 100 plaintiff civil trial lawyer, AV preeminent. He's been peer voted numerous times as a top attorney, ranked number 3 nationally in trial advocacy by U.S. News and World Report. A very accomplished attorney. And Mr. Laird, welcome today. Just briefly, how's it been since you've been out of politics and out of an election so far, or I guess out of the election piece?
Well, Greg, thanks for having me back again. It's a pleasure to see you and to see Helen again. And I don't think anyone ever gets totally out of politics.
Closer.
A little closer. I'm not totally out of politics. I've cut back quite a bit, obviously, since the election that I lost to Helen. But I don't think you ever totally get politics out of your blood. And we'll see what the future holds. But I'm continuing my law practice, very, very busy with my law practice down in Johnson County. And I'm here basically to reaffirm my support and my endorsement of Helen Kerwin. I think Helen should be the next state representative. I came to know her fairly well during the primary race, and I think she'll by far be the best candidate to represent our interests down in Austin.
Very well. And thanks for trusting us to come back on the show. We appreciate it. And good luck with the way that your law practice is going.
Thank you.
And one of the biggest questions I got during the original primary was, why is he running for elected judge? So maybe there's a future there for Mr. Lyndon Laird with your esteemed legal career. So we here at Texas Transparency Project, we truly believe that voter education and candidate outreach is imperative to preserving our republic. And the candidates, they're doing their job. The voters need to do their job too. And that begins with education on these issues and candidates. Where can voters go online to learn more about you? You've talked about www.helenkerwin.com and your Facebook group, Helen Kerwin for State Representative. So there's two places that anybody that wants to learn more about Ms. Kerwin and her campaign can go. That's helenkerwin.com and Helen Kerwin for State Representative on Facebook. And you can find out about any events that she'll be appearing at and stuff like that. And ma'am, we can, before we get into the issues here, your platform, we commend you for your lifelong community service. And we applaud you being civically engaged. And most of these positions don't pay well or don't pay anything. They just constrain time and you become publicly attacked. Publicly, it gets ugly. And unfortunately, in politics, a lot of times there's a lot of character assassination that goes on. So thank you for your years of service. Thank you for staying in the game and looking to help out Johnson and Somerville counties. But before we get to your three main issues, which are secure the border, eliminate property tax, and empowering parents, the reality is there's an elephant in the room that's beginning to gain a little momentum here, and it's regarding some property. I'm going to make this very clear. I am not a tax attorney. I'm not a tax man. I don't work for the Central Appraisal District, but there's beginning to be rumblings about some properties and some exemptions and stuff like that. Are you aware of this? It was discussed very briefly this morning on another radio show. Are you aware of what's going on with your properties? How do you feel about some of the structures of these exemptions that are, and like I said, I can't interpret tax code and things like that, but what are you aware of this and how this is working?
Yeah, I've heard accusations for the first time yesterday. And so I went to my chief appraiser in Somerville County. I've had the same tax man CPA for 50 years, so I've never really had to do it. So I went to the chief appraiser and we sat down and he went through the whole thing with me. And he said that my homestead is the building that they carved out so that it is qualifying for the homestead exemption where I live. And I have been on that property since I bought it in 1980. I've had no other address anywhere other than when I went to Washington, D.C. with my oldest daughter to homeschool her kids. And that was for 8 months. But with the tax code, even with a homestead, you have 2 years where you can be temporarily absent with the intent to come back. So he told me about that too.
Who's this?
This is our chief appraiser, Wes Rollin in Somerville County.
So yesterday there was a Facebook post by, I'm not going to say the name of the person, but that started floating this very lengthy post. There was no documents. And like I said, I don't understand them.
Well, I have the document. I have the CAD document. If anyone wants to see it, just get a hold of me and I'll send it to them or I'll post it, but I have the actual document.
Okay. So helenkerwin.com and Mr. Laird, are you?
LyndonLaird.com.
LyndonLaird.com. So helenkerwin.com, Facebook, Helen Kerwin for State Representative. Anybody who has questions about your property, how it's structured, they can contact you and you can walk them through the, it's probably a long conversation because tax codes. Very complicated.
Well, everything's legal, always has been. And then I know that I think they mentioned the ag exemption, and the ag exemption I have had all these years on the 34 acres in the county because I have horses and we had cattle. and we bale our own hay and sell it. So the ag exemption has always been legal too, and it's always been on that acreage.
Okay. So here again, if property taxes are a big issue, so if you have questions about Miss Kerwin's property, reach out to her Facebook or her website and figure that out, because I try to dive into different codes and stuff, and they are complicated. That's why you need a good lawyer.
Greg, and on this topic, I got my tax appraisal and bill just this past week. I live out in the country outside of Grandview on a homestead, and I'm guessing that my taxes went up by about 20% for the current taxes.
And we're going to get into property taxes
Mine
here.
went up $100,000.
$100,000.
$100,000.
Craig Hunley, if you're listening, you might be getting some phone calls on who to
Yeah.
recommend for some challenging some
Ready
appraisals.
to go to work on that.
So you have been all over town. Rep Burns has been all over town too.
Mhm.
You're going to different events. You have a lot of good endorsements. Who are the main people that are endorsing you?
Well, of course, President Trump and Governor Greg Abbott and Lieutenant Governor Patrick, AG Ken Paxton, and Ag Commissioner Sid Miller, who I worked with when I was mayor all those years ago, and some of the state representatives, Brian Harrison, Nate Schlotzline, Tony Tinderhold, and that. Talking about those wonderful conservative legislators, we need to bring up their new contract with Texas that I am so excited about.
Absolutely.
And I just want to support that and bring the House back into where it's run by the majority.
I agree.
I'd love to talk.
And here again, that's like tax code. There's a lot of parliamentary issues, and if we have time, we'll walk down some of those lanes. But let's get to your three main issues. So your three main issues, this is straight off HelenKerwin.com.
Mm-hmm.
Secure the border, eliminate property tax, and empower parents.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to talk about secure the border. This is a problem. Last time I had you on the show, we talked about Governor Abbott's stuff that he's doing down on the border at Eagle Pass. And I understand you took a trip down to Eagle Pass. So hearing about stuff when you're not necessarily there, you had a firsthand view at the border. What is your assessment of the border, how serious it is, and how did this elevate the importance and the and the need to fix this problem? Or how did that trip go?
Well, and we all know the statistics. We all know the statistics, almost 3 million in Texas and 13 million in America, and the impact that it is having on our society, not just food, shelter, clothing, but healthcare. Every ER room in Texas is their primary doctor, and their education, and we look at our veterans and we look at our seniors, and their care is being compromised. It is such a huge impact on us right now. It's alarming. So yes, I did fly down there, and I went to Eagle Pass, and I went to the gates at Shelby Park, and I talked to the Border Control there, and had sat down with DPS, had a meal with them, talked to them, and the National Guard. And the interesting thing about it is that all three groups are there, but they're not working together. They all take their orders, but there's no unification, and that's what the House bill that got killed on the floor that upset me so much. And one of the reasons, my motivation for going down there and seeing what kind of difference that bill would have made, where the Texas Border Protection Unification Unit, if it had passed, it would have allowed Governor Abbott to build a massive military force on the border. And he is actually building that base right now. And they showed it to me right in Shelby Park.
In Shelby Park.
But the thing I was so impressed about, too, is that because of the Biden disaster, he has had to take on not only Texas, but all of America. He is trying to protect. And when the feds took down the 2 rolls of razor wire, he said, that's fine. Go ahead and do it. We're just going to put up 3. Mm. And that's what we need. But if we have got to get bolder, we have got to realize We've got to empower them. The National Guard and the Border Control are not empowered. They can't handcuff. They have pepper spray. It's alarming. It's alarming. So hopefully in January that will happen, and we can hopefully take care of it. In the meantime, we're looking at the fentanyl coming over on the backs of immigrants, and we're looking at the cartels in Houston and all other large cities that are established, and of course the terrorist cells, and just flooding us. It's shocking. Something has to be done.
Well, and I'm in my mid 50s or early 50s, and I have a fourth and fifth grader, and I'm hoping someday that they find loving spouses and have children. I mean, so this is while it's a catastrophic problem now, I mean, everyone needs to look at this as how it's going to affect our children. I mean, does that worry you? How do you feel about that?
Terrified. And that's one of the reasons I jumped into, was just looking at the future of my family in Texas, in America.
Mr. Laird, as you were out campaigning, how big of a topic was this to the people you were hearing about?
Greg, this was uniformly number one with every group that I spoke to, was the number one topic. And I had not heard about this disunification factor that Helen was talking about just a moment ago. We all know that a house divided cannot stand.
Sure.
And so those different forces must be unified down there to get the job done. But with almost every person that I spoke to, without exception, the border security was the number one topic. And it is a disaster in this country and in the state right now. And we have to do something about it. We have to stop the drugs. We have to stop they're taking our legitimate jobs. And it's the number one crisis I think we have right now in this state, if not the nation.
Sure. And this unification group, and I'm just kind of learning about this. I spoke with Rep. Tinderholt at one of the events, and I look back. I'm a veteran, and I was in a special operations task force, and we had this problem. We had a problem where things became so compartmentalized for a while. This is early on in the war that, when you're not fighting a war, you can't really proof what your processes are. But we had a very wise general who's very famous, that I'll leave unnamed at this point, but he literally got people to instead of being isolated in little cubicles, to just turn and look inwards and force conversation and discussion and sharing of information. And it drastically changed our ability to negotiate really complex target sets. So hearing that these are separated is just mind-numbingly frustrating. So
I think another word for what we're talking about is simply leadership.
Sure.
We need leadership down there.
Mm-hmm.
And so tell us about this unification thing and what you've learned about it. I'm just hearing about this, but this was close to passing, why it didn't, I can't imagine. But
it was HB 7, and other than the I think very important bill that was killed too, which is banning purchase of Texas farmland by China.
Sure.
And I think that's just as important. And I hopefully that'll be introduced again in January. But the specifics of HB 7, other than giving the governor the power to have this force created to help secure the border, build the base at Shelby Park to house them up to 2,000. Can you imagine the difference that would make? But I tell you, when I was there, it was quiet, and I walked across the bridge, and it was quiet, and it proves to me the success of Operation Lone Star.
Sure.
And I commend Governor Abbott on that.
Now, I don't have the means to go down to the border, and obviously I'm just an average citizen. I don't get the access to that. But is it fair to say that Governor Abbott's plan is to expand this because it's pretty central, it's pretty narrow focused Operation Lone Star, right? Like Eagle Pass. Is this looking to expand over more of the rest of the state of Texas? I mean, we need to do more here. And he's committed to it. You're committed to it. So after our break, we'll finish up with the border, and we'll get on to eliminate property tax and empower parents. We're here with Texas House District 58 candidate Helen Kerwin and Mr. Lyndon Laird. We'll be back right after the break.
School choice. Sweet sounding words from sweet sounding groups like the American Federation for Children. Well, the truth is alarming. These are the people caught marketing private school vouchers to illegal immigrants in Arizona. And they want to do the same in Texas. But Dwayne Burns said no. And that's why they're targeting him in this election. The voucher program they're pushing is a magnet for illegal immigration. Fully qualified to receive these $10,000 vouchers, illegal aliens would go to the front of the line ahead of U.S. citizens. These groups want to replace Dwayne Burns with a rubber stamp, and they've got one in Helen Kerwin. Kerwin has pledged to support this voucher scheme if elected, but we can't let that happen. Dwayne Burns' top priority is border security. He's stopped taxpayer-funded handouts to illegal aliens, and he's endorsed by every law enforcement association in Texas. Political ad paid for by the Dwayne Burns campaign.
Let's be honest. Wheelchairs are heavy, bulky, and ugly. If you carry a wheelchair in your car to take care of a loved one, you know how hard it is getting that clunky, old-style wheelchair in and out of your car. Introducing the Feather Chair Wheelchair. At 13 pounds, it's the world's lightest wheelchair. It folds in seconds and fits neatly in your trunk, backseat, or closet, so you can take it everywhere. And it's only available right here. Order yours today and get a free wheelchair case, a $50 value, yours free. The Feather Chair. The world's lightest wheelchair is just $4.99 with easy payments as low as $16 a month. Sorry, no Medicare or insurance accepted. So call right now to order yours.
800-823-5826. 800-823-5826. 800-823-5826. That's 800-823-5826.
Welcome back, Johnson County, Texas Transparency Project. We're here with Helen Kerwin, candidate for Texas House District 58, and Mr. Lyndon Laird, who was a former candidate for Texas House District 58. We're in the middle of a runoff election. Mr. Laird has come out publicly and endorsed Ms. Helen Kerwin in her race against Representative Dwayne Burns. But before we get back to, we're going to talk about some comments that are coming up in the chat, and we're going to finish up with the border and move on to the property tax and empowering parents. But I want to remind everybody that Joco Community Radio is a member of EMG, a radio and podcast collective, proudly serving communities like Johnson and Tarrant County, Texas. We are live 365 on the TuneIn Radio Network and on our station app. Check out our lineup and more at tuneinjoco.com. We thank our valued partners in helping us amplify the voices of communities. You heard the commercials. Be sure to connect with Todd Hurd and Associates, attorneys at law. Use code JOCO2024 for 25% off your first order at thetiffy.com, and join the Swipe Nation today and save on your credit card processing at swipenationusa.com, locally owned and operated. Reach out to Tiffany at jo.co@jococommunityradio.com. That is email is jo.co@jococommunityradio.com for advertising rates as low as $50 a month. So there's a couple comments here. One is talking about how properties are structured. I'm not going to read it. It's very long, but it's talking about properties owned by a limited partnership, not individually, can't, and homestead per law. And it's citing a comptroller texas.gov. So here again, this is started rearing its head about properties. So you have a big piece of property in Grandview. You have a bed and breakfast on it. You live at this property. What is the what is this property structured correctly? How does here again, go to helenkerwin.com, go to Helen Kerwin for state representative, ask her directly. But can you show that your property is properly structured or not? How can people get through this, ma'am?
Well, I have paper. I'm happy to share it with anyone. I met with the chief appraiser yesterday and the chief appraiser today, and the CAD board attorney, which is also the Johnson County CAD board attorney. And both of them sat down and said, this is legal, very legal. Your homestead is not in the LP. We carved it out as a homestead. So the LP that I formed many years ago as protection, because I granted the city of Glen Rose to build the Riverwalk along the bottom of my property. And for liability reasons, I had to do that. And the homestead was then carved out as a homestead. It is not connected to the LP. And if you can give me the numbers of whoever's asking the questions, I'd be happy to talk to them. Or
it's names in the chat. When the show stops, when the show stops, you can look at the names and you can respond to them in the comments if you want. And then another question is, so that's from Tiffany Hurd. Craig Hunley, how are you holding up with all the false attacks against you? So this has been an ugly race. I think one of the biggest things I heard was flyers and mailers with people on fire. And I've talked with Representative Burns a lot about how PAC money works, and there's not a lot of control on some of that. How do you feel about running a race and all that?
He and I have talked about the negative mailers. Neither of us have control over them, and it's tough. It's tough. I just focus on policy, and I focus on talking to the citizens. Last night I was at the Grandview City Council.
I saw you there. I didn't know you were going to be there. I saw you there. Yeah.
I'm trying to do all of the small towns. So
Sure.
not small, but all of the parts of Johnson County. This morning I was at the fellowship breakfast at Rosa's. Dwayne was there too. We had a good engagement with how the house is being operated and the new contract. And then I went to the Alvarado Chamber of Commerce lunch, and I'm here now. And then I've got a Zoom meeting at 7. And to me, that's what it's all about. And I love it. And, I don't let the swamp, obviously we have a swamp in the campaign, I've learned. And that's natural. That's going to happen. So I just move on. Now, I do like to get the facts out, because a lot of people don't have access to the facts when there's the slander and the lies, and that's been happening. So, it doesn't affect me. I'm knocking on doors and making phone calls and moving forward.
Well, and as a famous philosopher said, Helen, that which does not kill me makes me stronger.
Yes, yes,
I think that's true.
Like the night the election run at the election party, and we were all waiting for the returns, and at like 9:30. There it was, 49.9. And I thought, and then of course it went back to, I think.
Well, we know who's responsible for that.
40,
right?
yes, we do. Yes, we do.
I played the fifth.
But I tell
Stay
you
close to the mic.
what has been so great. And yesterday was day 1 of my 5th month campaigning.
Wow.
And I am such a better candidate in this runoff. I know the issues better. I'm getting better at public speaking, I think, which is really been hard for me. So this runoff has been good for me. It really
and I remember, so I tried to go to different watch parties. I was at yours. I went to Troy Fuller, so I try to get around as much as I can on the watch parties. And I remember watching those numbers come in, and Troy Fuller, great pizza at that place. Great, gosh, that pizza was good. And then you were at Dillon Depot with Troy. Troy Fuller was there. He won his constable race, but I remember that the nervousness in the room for everyone and at those watch parties, it's pretty intense. Talked about these questions. I'm going to give you a number after the show. I can give you a phone number you can call. I know you have a Zoom meeting after this, so it probably won't happen right away.
That'd be great.
So we'll sort that. You'll all sort that out.
Yeah.
So back to the border. It's a big problem. One of the things going on right now locally is go ahead. What, Jeff?
Well, and another thing I wanted to say about the border that really got me fired up is last week in DC, when they passed for Ukraine and Israel, the foreign aid, and we did not get a cent. That just really, really got me. I'm just ready to do whatever I can.
Well, and
So
they
wrong.
announced
So wrong.
right around that, they announced that they're considering bringing Palestinian refugees here en masse to protect them, to be safe. So yeah, there's a lot of issues.
And then it's rippling down to the university.
Yeah, you heard that
culture.
right. You heard that right. That's what I just said.
Going to bring them to Texas or to the USA?
To the USA. Well,
Okay.
yeah, we need a strong Texas House District 58 to
Yes,
take care of whoever
it
wins.
will be strong. Well,
So-
and then the university, the culture at the universities, and I keep thinking we've been asleep.
Yes.
This has been forming a long time. We cannot let this slip anymore. It's alarming.
I went in the military after 9/11. A couple years after 9/11, I wanted to make sure the war was going to last longer than the first one I joined for. But I was gone about 300 days a year for many years and a lot of deployments. And I came back and I felt like, whoa, what is this? Because I was so busy, I just didn't have time to pay attention to anything locally. And there's some serious cleaning up to do. There's no question about that. But we're going to move on to the number 2 issue in Johnson County. And that's eliminate property tax or replace property tax. There's a lot. You can't just eliminate tax, period. But eliminate property tax. And we spoke briefly about Craig Hunley and Russell Bennett. You've met Craig Hunley, I believe, Mr. Laird, and for someone to take so much time, energy, effort, and treasure to put into helping people save their homes is just a credit to him. He's got the coolest Facebook name. He's, is Texas Nonpartisan Horse Barn Facebook group. So what are you hearing as you're out talking to voters about property taxes? Appraisals are coming out now. There's hundreds and hundreds of millions of school bonds. That's debt being asked for. So you got this double-edged sword, these inflated school budgets and bonds. You got the massive amounts of property taxes going up. What are you hearing from voters and their uncertainty with this topic, ma'am?
It is in the events that I do, it gets as much applause as the border. And that's what kind of got me fired up to move it up and campaign on it as hard as I am. Especially, like I said, with the seniors and with the young families, and it's just getting worse. Russell and Craig, of course, have the concept of eliminating, but not eliminating, replacing or recrafting in a consumption tax, a VAT tax, a sales tax. It's just another way of collecting tax, but it's voluntary. So you're not assessed like you are in your house. You purchase something and you voluntarily pay the tax. That's one option.
And where you lay your head down, it's not dependent on it.
Exactly.
You don't potentially lose the roof over your head because it's.
And Texas being the number 8th economy, about to be the 7th. We're about to beat France from what I've heard in the world. With all of our reserves and the growth, our number 1 state as far as growing in business. And you look at our budget and our surplus and our rainy day and our oil and gas reserves. And we are going to have enough revenue to I know that, like with the school choice, I know a lot of the rural communities are very concerned about that. And, and then of course, with eliminating the tax, how is that going to happen? There's formulas that are being worked on. And now I was going to tell you the other group that I've talked to about eliminating the tax per se is the Texas Public Policy Foundation. I went down there and talked to their guru on taxes, and their philosophy is to buy down the M&O debt, which is over 60% of everyone's property taxes.
M&O and IS combined schools, school tax.
And they did that last year with the surplus, $20 billion, I think. I may be a little wrong on that, and they are anticipating doing it the next 2 sessions.
They need to buy it down a lot more than they have so far.
Yeah. So I think that I would like to think that it's doable in maybe 2 sessions. But you have a lot of issues. You have the rural communities that won't have the sales, so there's a distribution issue, and a collection and allocation. And there's so many issues I don't fully understand yet because I'm just beginning to get on that bandwagon. So that website, eliminatepropertytax.com, is beautifully very user friendly, laid out. Russell Bennett did it, and anyone can go to that website, and he has got all of the questions and answers so organized that it'll give you a good understanding of it.
And Craig Hunley here locally and locally here in Johnson County, Texas, nonpartisan political group from the Horse Barn Property Tax Reform. That's his Facebook group. Mr. Laird, you've talked to him. How do you feel about Helen's ability to navigate the Austin and work on this complex problem and save people's homes?
Well, I think Texas is in a unique position to be perhaps the first state in the country to eliminate property taxes. And I believe that, Greg, for several reasons. Number one is what Helen mentioned. We're the 8th biggest economy in the world, soon to be the 7th biggest economy in the world. And I read last week in the Wall Street Journal someplace that Texas is now the biggest energy production state or nation in the entire world.
And that's what's Biden with throwing up roadblock. Gosh forbid if they get out of his way.
So that's why we're in a unique position to be able to eliminate property taxes, is because of our tremendous income with oil and gas and other natural resources. That's what funds our tremendous world-class university system. And so I think Texas can do it. And if anyone can do it, I think we can do it. And Helen is the person to do it. She'll provide new leadership, wisdom, life experience, and she's the one to do it.
Well, and a great thing too is you have a really strong grassroots local group here that is willing to work with anybody who is for elimination of property taxes. That's really knowledgeable. So you have a really strong grassroots group to rely on. Craig Hunley's group and Russell Bennett's.
They are on a mission.
Sure.
It's so inspiring. Yeah. I'm ready to do that. And the beauty of coming back into running for office at my age is I'm done raising kids, don't have to worry about a career, don't have a job. I am just ready to go down there and do what I think will be the right thing, and don't care if I'm popular or not.
And you're talking about your age. One of the most frustrating things for me is I watch how a lot of when taxing entities are asking for more money, whether it's inflated budgets or massive school bonds, they always want to, oh, if you're over 65, your taxes are you don't have to worry about this. No. And they're not, and they're very disingenuous on how that property will be left to their heirs and about how their children. So if your property is been frozen for 15 years and unfortunately at some point you pass and your heirs come in now, they're going to get crushed. This is a very, very disingenuous and shady way to try to get seniors on board with something that they could technically be voting to wreck their generational wealth that they're trying to pass on to their children. There's a lot of issues with this issue.
Exactly.
It is.
Exactly.
Greg, and something else Helen doesn't really talk about a whole lot, but I want to mention it here, is in Austin, Helen will have the respect of our leaders. She will have the support and the respect of our top leaders, the governor, Governor Abbott, the lieutenant governor, the attorney general. All of our top leaders support and respect Helen, and she will have their ear. And I don't think we can say that about her opponent, Mr. Burns. In fact, I think it's quite to the contrary, what Mr. Burns' position is vis-a-vis our other top leaders.
There's definitely some fallout for during the last legislative session.
If our local leaders cannot be heard or will not be heard in Austin, they can't help us. Yeah. Helen will be heard.
So on to our last topic here. And this is probably one of the biggest points of contention. I think local voters have, as you've so eloquently laid out, the border and property taxes as the top two issues, but this empowering parents, and it gets so many labels, whether it's school choice, education savings account, school vouchers. The reality is that House Bill 1 failed in the special session. It failed by not many votes. That bill was, in my opinion, not a good bill. Not a good bill. I homeschool my kids. What are your thoughts on this? And as you're talking out to your potential constituency, if elected, what are your thoughts about empowering parents and about expanding some of the fiscal ability, the ability to take some of the fiscal resources with them to schools? talk us to us about what you're hearing about that, ma'am.
Well, I come from wanting families to be involved in the decision-making process for their kids' education. That is my main purpose in being in support of the school choice bill. I realize the bill died. There's really no need to talk about it. The new bill, I'm sure, in January. Hopefully, I am hoping if I'm elected, I can work on it because I am trying to talk to educators. I've talked to 2 superintendents. I want to understand that system and I want to understand why and how it is going to hurt them as much as they think it is. I mean, I understand about the financial and the money found on the child, but it's more complicated than that.
It is
what I'm learning. So I am hoping that new bill will be so much better, and hopefully both sides will be able to have input on it. And I'm looking forward to working on it if I'm elected. It's very important to me that kids, that families can choose where their kids can be educated, that it opens up a lot of pathways for kids to succeed.
And you don't want to wreck the public school system. Your daughter's a principal.
All 3 of my daughters went K through 12 at the Glen Rose Independent School District. And to this day, and they're all thriving, productive, happy adults. And I credit the school system in Glen Rose with that. I so love the public school system and what it did for my daughters, but I want for the kids and for the parents that maybe want to go to a parochial, maybe you want to go to a charter, maybe they want to homeschool. I want them to choose.
Sure.
And I want it to work for the families. I want it to work for the public school system. It's just got to be a way.
Well, and so the biggest fear is the strings that come with it. So it's so funny how all of a sudden our money becomes their money, and then to get our money back, it becomes with a bunch of strings attached. So some of the the big points of contention with the failed HB1 was funding schools for illegal immigrants through the voucher system. Would you support taxpayer money going to give a voucher to an illegal immigrant to go to a school? Would you support that if it was in a bill?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. Now, I know the Supreme Court ruling in 1983.
There's some constitutional issues that would need to be negotiated.
Sure. We've been educating immigrants ever since then.
Those
we
can
have
be worked
to.
around. Those can be worked around.
Exactly, Lyndon. And because HB Bill 1, the vouchers, the original concept of school choice was based on vouchers. The money went to the school, all of it. With the savings account in HB1, the ESAs, educational savings accounts, all the money went to the family, every penny of it. And they made the decision if they wanted to go to tuition, if they want to go to a new computer, if they want to go to tutors. It was up to them to decide how to spend that. And Representative Harrison has written a bill ready to introduce it in January, where it will disqualify illegal immigrants from the savings. Well, let me finish though, so no one will jump on this. From the savings accounts, because you can't do it with the old toxic word voucher.
Vouchers, yeah.
And
that's a lot of the problems is here. People they hear a word and it's and you got to look at what's in it, and you got to understand it. So Rep Harrison, we've talked about Rep Harrison a few times. That's Rep Bryson Harrison. He's out by Midlothian. He's on the education committee. So any legislation per education is going to go through his committee. He's a smart individual. I've heard him speak. I've spoken at his committee numerous times. Another one is big fear.
That's what Lyndon was saying. That's the wiggle room around it.
Exactly.
So people don't worry about illegal immigrants, getting the money from any sort of. Well, I can't
don't
say
worry.
that yet.
Don't worry about Helen Kerwin supporting a bill that
I will not support it.
Okay.
Right.
And so another big point of contention is STAR testing. Now, there needs. I'm okay with some types of an accountability system. I think STAR is crazy. It's the devil that we're left with. It is what it is. So until it's fixed, that is what you have to determine whether your school is succeeding academically or not, like at least quantifiable, right? And a lot of people are in the bill talked about having to force STAR testing. Would Miss Helen Kerwin mandate STAR testing requirements for some form of an education savings account thing? At the existing STAR test.
Well, I would like to kill the STAR test.
Oh,
I
who
think
wouldn't?
it costs our state millions in contracts, from what I understand, to issue that and to do that every year. And like you've heard over and over, the teachers have to teach to the test.
Yes.
And of course they're not happy with that either. And
Nope.
you're compromising the quality of teaching. And so I'm all for getting rid of that. I also agree with you that we do need a standard of some sort, of course, some sort of benchmark. I don't know what that is. I would have to talk to the educators. The teachers, they would be the best ones to recommend something, but never allow it to grow into the monster that the STAR test has grown into.
Absolutely. And the benchmark thing, I mean, if you don't have some form of benchmark, if you don't have some way to gauge if what you're doing is working, then you can't, then you're just spinning wheels. I'm going to use a really dumbed down version here, but I mean, if the bottom line, if there's a school out there that's teaching 2 + 2 is 5, and you never have a test, you never have some way to validate if what you're teaching is working, you're never going to know that 2 + 2 is really 4. And I mean, that's a very simplistic way to look at it, but I hate the STAR test. It's the only way to compare districts to districts, and it's what they're accountable to. That's their report card. I hate it. Want it changed. But you do have to be able to, in the best interest of the kids, you have to have something to tell if the mechanism of public school is working or not.
True.
And that's just the reality of it. So we're getting ready to wind down our show here. We got a couple minutes left. So Mr. Lyndon Laird, nothing that could deter you from supporting Helen Kerwin here. You're all in.
Of course, Greg. And I want to reiterate, I want to encourage everyone to vote for Helen when early voting starts, and especially on May 28th, voting day. Is so crucially important because historically speaking, we've had just a small fraction of the number of people who voted in the primary that also vote in the runoff. And so just a few changes here or there could flip the results of this race that we had in the primary. And so Helen needs her supporters to go out and vote. And I support her. I encourage her voters to go vote for her, and she'll do us a good job. We need her. We need a change in Austin right now.
Ms. Kerwin.
Thank you, Lyndon.
Ms. Kerwin, www.helenkerwin.com. Facebook is Helen Kerwin for state representative. Last thoughts, ma'am. Last time before the election.
I would like people to look at the contract with Texas to see how our 8 conservative bills were killed because of how the House is operating right now
That's
in
the
Austin.
Parliamentary issues.
It is a parliamentary issue, and we've got to get conservatives in that will not vote liberally or with the Democrats. We don't want Democratic chairs. We want to limit Democratic members or even having them all. We have got to have our Republican House run like it's Republican.
Well, if you can get Rep. Harrison to come on the show next week, we can talk about just about that.
I will try.
And about those problems.
I will try. I'll ask him.
So thanks for joining us on the Texas Transparency Project. Ms. Helen Kerwin, Mr. Lyndon Laird. We got Representative Dwayne Burns in 2 weeks. No matter what side you're on, get out and vote. Get out and vote. Get out and vote, and be knowledgeable about the issues when you vote. We'll see you next week.
From Burleson to Venus and Grandview to Godley, this is the voice of Johnson County, Joco Community Radio.
If you're trying to quit drinking or doing too many drugs,